ever see Peter Pan? You ever thought Peter Pan could have been a horror story? Well, that's what Shazam issue number 3 is. Peter Pan as a horror story. So our comic opens up to pretty much a party at the Funlands where our protagonist, Billy Batson, Freddie Freeman, who I still think is going to turn evil at some point, Darla Dudley, Mary Bromfield, Eugene Cho, and Pedro Pena are meeting Kid King, as he says, a toast to Billy Batson and his wonderful family. And he introduces himself as King Kid, and he points out that the Council of Wizards called him the ruler of the Funlands, and effectively what the Funlands are is a place for kids to go from troubled homes and to just sort of have fun. Like every day is a holiday, but you've got, he has 306 amusement rides, 22 candy factories, 55 malt shops. We even have the biggest picture book library in all of the 7 realms. So it's sort of like if Peter Pan got control of Pleasure Island, except instead of, at some point being turned into a jackass to work presumably in the coal mine, you just have fun forever. And while everyone is just sort of enjoying it all, Mary is the one who is sort of skeptical about everything, because as Mary points out that, King Kid knew who we were before they met. So he asks how. And he says, well, for years, more years than he can remember, the Magiclands have been sealed off from one another. No new kids could come in, and then suddenly the tunnels were lit, the doors unlocked, and all the kids were coming back in. And this is because there's been a new champion of the Magiclands, a new champion for courtesy of Shazam. And it's Billy, and as Darla points out, Billy chose them to be in, and he says, you know what? I'm hoping you'll choose me. And if you choose me as the 7th person, all I have to do is know the magic word you share, and I can join the group. And Darla is totally up for it because, we've been wondering who that was going to be, and she's all set to give the word, but Mary comes like, no. First of all, let's not. All right, it's a secret, and we don't need a 7th family member. Members only thing here. And this is where King Kid gets a bit serious as to exactly why this needs to happen. As much as he understands, Mary's, hesitation, but ever since the 7 members of the Council of Eternity were killed by the Sins, the Magiclands have been in desperate need of champions, 7 champions, 1 for each land, and that the lands had almost been overrun by Mr. Mime and his monsters, and that some of those lands are still suffering. And it was the purpose of the 7 wizards to protect the 7 lands. And he says that he's destined to be one. He knows it. Then he gives us a story of, how he ended up here. His parents were particularly cruel people. And, one day he spilled the porridge and he knew severe punishment was coming. So he ran off and he ran and he ran. When he got caught, he thought it was going to be over for him. But then he was enveloped by a strange light. And he found himself on a peppermint field. And beside him was a scepter. And it was his wishing stick, which is what he calls it. And that sort of gives him ideas as he's walking around. Sort of speaks to him exactly what he has to do. He imagines a carousel, and he rode it for hours and days, but he felt a bit lonely. And then he saw a child begin to arrive, and her name was Marigold, and she'd been running from a wicked stepmother when she tripped and fell and found herself here. Seems to be a pattern here. And he's like, let's get on the carousel and we'll ride. And then more kids showed up, so we created more carousels, we created more stuff for these kids. And that's ultimately the purpose and the creation of the Funland. And King Kid brings them to, not the default station, but the station, but the station where the train got off, and he points to the Magiclands route, and that, each of these needs a champion. Otherwise, they're never going to work properly, so help us out. And Billy seems inclined to, everyone else seems inclined to, but Mary says, well, hold on, maybe we should figure this out at home. And King Kid's like, home? Why would you go home with the adults, with the grown folks? And this all seems to be good. Billy's like, we should go home, it's been a big day, it's been educational, and our parents are probably worried about us. King Kid's like, you live with your parents? Willingly? And this is sort of where you see King Kid's issue is. He's been an eternal kid. He hates grown-ups because he's only met bad grown-ups. And this is when it gets a bit bad, when Mary defends her parents, and the part of her foster parents, they're probably worried sick, and Freddie says, you're such an adult, Mary. And he's like, wait, she's an adult? And you're like, well, because she's technically 18, and And that's when he realized, like, okay, I got it. King Kid's like, okay, I get it. If Mary says you should go, then arrest Mary! And the clowns jump Mary, and they jump Darla as everyone's trying to get him safe. Even Freddy's gone. That's when Billy, Eugene, and Pedro suit up. They're like, let's go. They activate, they do the Shazam thing, and they engage King Kid trying to save their family. And it just sort of ensues into an almost Scooby-Doo-esque moment, like, hey, look, a hall of doors. What happens? We get knocked into the doors. And it turns out each door is its own little special place, with Eugene and Pedro falling into a video game land, or the Game Lands, as it's more appropriately called. And then we see Freddy arrive in the Wildlands, where a bear, a cat, and I'm guessing a horse find him unconscious. And they said, like, no, we follow the law, Jones. When we find people here, we feed them to the tigers. And that's how the comic ends. So Shazam issue 3 is interesting. King Kid sort of sells this, and I think that's sort of the problem. Although we do get a very sort of, I want to say, generic insight into the characters here. You know, Mary is the thoughtful one. Darla is the beautiful, optimistic, emotional one. Billy's just sort of along for the ride. And Freddy, I still think Freddy's going to turn evil at some point, especially with this whole tiger thing. Pedro and Eugene seem to be the ones yet to be developed. And I think Pedro's going to be like the chill dude. And I think if we're going to be lazy, Eugene Choi is going to be the intellectual, because he's Asian. Or maybe not. Maybe this whole thing will surprise. Anyway, if you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out some other videos on the channel. If you read Shazam, love to hear your thoughts on it. Are you looking forward to the movie? I'm looking more forward to it than I am Captain Marvel, which is kind of ironic. But anyway, I'll catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. May your fandom serve you well.